Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi. Amma ba'du. I greet our listening audience with Assalamu alaikum. We welcome you to our Thursday evening Quran presentation. And today we're going to be looking at chapter 18, verse 28. And we're going to look at some sources. We're going to look at a verse, look at some sources. And as we know, these presentations that we're doing these days are directed towards the Mahdi students and the work that they are doing. So we're going to be looking at a few sources today. Chapter 18, verse 28. So let's go right to it. Let me get my pen up. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. واصبر نفسك مع الذين يدعون ربهم بالغداة والعشي يريدون وجهه. Just up to this point. This is what we're going to be looking at. Just up to this point. So when you're looking at your verses, it's not necessary that we try to comment on the whole verse. The first part of the verse is the crux of the verse. That's where you want to give your attention to the first part of the verse. So actually, we say wasbir. I'm just going to give you the commonly translated words. You would use Abu Faris translation to know each word, the translation of each word, the meaning of each word in English. You would use the Abu Faris translation. That way, in the class, when we're going over asking questions, we'll all be on the same page in terms of translation. So this word is command. It's the command, and it's what's better, the command. It's commanding you, masculine singular, to be patient. This could be the crux of the verse. The first thing is being patient. Nafsaka, the object of the verb. Nafsaka, if we put this in a command, we would say patient yourself. Be patient with yourself. To make it make sense, patient yourself. To make it make sense, be patient with yourself. Ma'a, so that would be what it's all about, being patient. And then there's more that goes with it. They give you more about the verse. Ma'a alladhina, with those yad'una, they call Rabbahum, their Lord, Bilgadati, in the mornings, well ashiyi, in the evenings, Yuriduna, they desire wajhahu. Wajhahu is the word we're going to be looking at. That's the word we want to look at. And we're going to look at the first part of the verse also. But this is the word we're going to look up. Wajhahu. I chose this word because looking at the verse, wajhahu, desiring, yuriduna, they are desiring, they desire, and this is the word for face, his face. That's the idea. The idea of this word is his face. That's the idea we're going to have. So we keep that idea when we're looking at the sources. Then we see how the meanings are associated with the idea of face. So the first source we're looking at is King Fahd. And if you notice, I'm only translating, looking at King Fahd that deals up to the word Wajhahu. After that, I'm not looking at the translation of King Fahd. And you all can do the same when you're doing your verses. You're writing comments on your verses. That way it won't be too much. It won't be too much for you. So he's saying, what's better? What's better? The same word that was used in the verse. So use the same translation. What's better? Nefsakat. So you would say, patient yourself. Be patient with yourself. Same thing. Ayyuha an-nabi. O prophet. O prophet. So this ka, nefsakat, is you singular. That's you singular. And what's better? It's better would be you masculine singular. Command. And the first person, when the Quran is addressing the singular, would be Muhammad the Prophet. Because the Quran is being spoken to him first. It's being revealed to him. So the speech is to him as the individual first. But this would be for all individuals. After him, it's all individuals. It's not the group. It's the individual. Every individual has to be patient. Be patient with yourself. So he's saying, what's better? Nafsaka ayyuha an-nabi. Ma'a ashab. So we have ma'a here. So he's saying, ashabika. With your companions. Be patient with your companions. So we're talking about alladina, with those. Who is the those? It's your companions, men fuqara'i al-mu'mineen, from the poor of the believers. This is all alladina. Then alladina, the same alladina ya'buduna, they worship Rabbahum. Rabbahum. Yad'una, he's saying, he's defining as they worship. They worship, the word da'wah. Dua and da'wah comes out of the same word, yad'una. They worship Rabbahum, their Lord, the same as their Lord there. Wahdahu, alone. وَيَدْعُونَهُ, and they call upon him fi as-sabahi, that's the morning, sabah is the morning, wal-masai, and the evening, the morning and the evening. So you want to look, when you look these words up, look at the verse to see where he's at in the verse. And you may find the same word for morning, a similar word for evening. Sabah and Masa. Yuriduna, here's yuriduna, they desire, bidhalika, with that, wajhahu. So, King Fahd is a little easier than the other sources. So learn how to read King Fahd grammatically correct. That's the lesson. Grammatically correct. And see where he's always reflect back on the verse to see where he's at. That's all I'm going to do with King Fahd. Now, the word that we want to look at is wedge. Wajah. So the first source we're looking at is Aragib. He says, Aslu al-wajhi al-jarihatu. Aslu al-wajhi, the root of al-wajhi is al-jariha. Al-jariha, we have this word a lot in this literature. It is an extremity of the body, the limbs and extremities of the body. So it's not just the limbs like the arms and the legs, or the hands and the feet. Here, the face is also referred to as al-Jariha. So as we look at these words up and coming across this word al-Jariha and the different parts of the body that's being referred to as al-Jariha, then we'll come to the conclusion that the external body, the parts of the external body, is referred to as al-Jariha. It's just not just the hands. Because we've mentioned hands, we've mentioned legs, we've mentioned eyes, ears, mouth. They all have been mentioned as al-Jariha. So we could say the external parts of the body, and the functioning parts of the body, the external parts, would be al-Jariha. So that's al-Wajh. We won't translate al-Wajh. We have an idea of what al-Wajh is, al-Wajhi, but we won't translate it. So the root of al-Wajhi is the extremity of the body. Now, this we could say is ma'ruf, because everybody knows what wajh is. Everybody knows what a face is. So he doesn't have to go too much in describing face. It's a part of the body. Then he says, Qala ta'ala, and he said, the Most High, Faghsilu wujuhakum wa aydiyakum. Then wash your faces and your hands. Aydiyakum, and your hands. Speaking of, we would attribute it to the wudu. Faghsilu wujuhakum wa aydiyakum. Wash your faces. So in this sense, if we look at this in terms of wudu, he's given the first literal meaning of wajh, the face, the part of the body that's called the face. That's in this that's the original, the aslu. That's the root meaning of al-wajh. Yes. Now, if you go further, which I'm going to go further, you could take that much and deal with that much. But now, if you go back to the verse now, we're saying here in the verse, yuriduna, let me take my time. Yuriduna wajhahu, his face. Then we have to ask, does Allah have a face? What do you mean by his face? And one of the things that you will find in studying the history of Islam and the scholars in the history of Islam, the early scholars, because they're coming out of a society of idol worshippers, where they are worshiping deities in the material sense. Many of them don't have a concept. They can't conceive or grasp a deity that's unseen, meaning that's outside of the physical. Many people are like that today in America. They have to see God in the physical. And they have made man, because they come to grow and develop to find man is the highest form of creation, so therefore we'll make man the God. Nothing's higher than man. So we make man the God. So they'll read face and think that Allah has a face. And there are people today that will argue that Allah is a man and Allah has a face, because they don't understand scriptural language. Yes. So the scholars, they took interest to make sure when reading the Quran, you would not attribute any physicality, anthropomorphic idea or figure to Allah. in their comments, in their tafsirs, that was one of the concerns. They had to make sure you did not read the Quran incorrectly in that sense, because that would be shirk. That would be making associations, a part of creation, associating it with God or as God. So you have to see how they took, how they put importance on that because of the society they were coming out of. Similar to the society that we're coming out of as Muslims and reading the Quran now for ourselves. We come from a society of idol worshippers. The movie stars, we make idols out of them. It's not the body of knowledge that they hold. It's the idea of their physical appearance. We'll make them our idol. We make the athlete our idol. We make the leaders our idols. We treat them like idols. We have former leaders that have passed on. We treat them like idols because of this society that we've come out of. And this society itself, when we're talking about many of the uneducated, they had God, they had an idol that they were presented to as God or in the Godhead. This is the history of religion in America, especially in the African American had this experience. We did not have the experience of having a concept of God as we do today when we speak of Allah today. And many still have a problem with it. But that is due to the influence that this society has in religion, has had in religion, especially, I would say, with the common people in religion. So in reading this, we know we're not talking about the face like when we say wash your face. When you make wudu, wash your face. Now let's go to the next part. We'll make the connections as we go. Then another verse, it says, وَرُبَّمَا, and perhaps, أَبْبَرَ عَنْ الذَّاتِ بِوَجْهِ. He says perhaps it's expressed. It is expressed or expressing about الذَّاتِ. الذَّاتِ is the being. That's the being, we can say the being, the essence, the nature, the whole self. So it's about the that. We had this word yesterday. It came up in the Balaga class. We talked about wajh, and then when we talk about Allah and wajh, we're talking about that, azati, bil wajh. So we're saying it's about azati when we're saying it in terms of wajh, bil wajhi. Fi qawlihi, in the saying of Allah, وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ, and the wajh of your Lord remains. يَبْقَى ذُو جَلَالِ الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. So now, let me show something here. As students, you got the first part. I'm going a little further for you to look at. You can go back and listen to the recordings and learn how to read more and more of Raga. Now, we're looking at verses. So we take this word zu, the word that. The word zati is derived from the word zu. Zati is derived from zu. So here we can say, using Quran, bil Quran, how Allah defines himself in the Quran. He used the Quran to define the Quran. Then zu is a substitute for wajh. So zu is defining wajh. We could say yabqa Rabbuka Zu al-Jalali. We can say Zu instead of saying which. So you can see how Ragib and other scholars we're going to see how they are saying the wedge. When we talk about the wedge, it's the being. It's the whole being. Now, we'll come back to it. His essence. And his whole essence is El Jalali. When we talk about his essence, El Jalali, the high, El Ikrami, the noble, the high, the noble, his whole dhu. He's the dhu of El Jalali, wal Ikram, that encompasses his whole being. El Jalali, El Ikram. These are attributes that are spoken of his whole being. Yes. So you can see how even with the Quran, we can see how wedge is being defined. We continue, Kila Dhatuhu. Again, he's saying, as to say, his being. When we say Al-Jalali wal-Ikram, we're saying his being. Wakila, and it is said, Arada bil-wajhi ha-huna tawajjuh. At-tawajjuh. At-tawajjahu. He says he desires by al-wajh here. And he's going to show what he's talking about. At-tawajjuhu. Here at tawajjuhu, it is the we could say the attention ilallahi, the turning one's attention to Allah. When we're seeking, let's go back to how we can put it in the verse. We go back and we're saying that they desire al-wajhahu, meaning that they desire that they give attention to Allah. They're turning themselves, giving attention to Allah by seeking Allah's essence. Ilallahi ta'ala bil a'mali as-salihah. And they're doing this by you giving attention to Allah by your good works. I could go a step further. I'll just leave it at good works so you can see what's being said. Now, that's another concept, adding to the conceptual idea of wedge. Then we have the verse, فَإِنْ حَجُّوكَ, and if they argue with you, فَقُلْ, then say, أسلمت وجهي لله ومن اتبعني. Say, I submit wajhiya lillahi. I submit my, it's more than just my face. It's not my face, but here is my whole being. Everything. My soul, my spirit, my heart, my mind, my intellect, my brain, everything. Everything makes up the wajh, the total being of the person. And in the prayer, if we use the prayer as a sign, then we can see the whole being is being placed in submission. It's submitting. Aslamtu. So it's a sign. But the reality is that my whole being, I submit my whole being to Allah, not just the face. So again, in the Balagha class, we talked about this being juz'iyya, that the face is being used as a part of the whole being. But the face is being used, a portion of the being is being used to speak about the whole being. So face is being used. Yes, for those who are in the Balagha class. And I invite you all to come and sit in on Wednesday evenings from 7 to 9. From about 7:30 to about 8:15 or so. The same way you hear on the webinar. To come into the Balaga class, you have a greater appreciation of the Quran by studying Balaga. Balaga is the eloquence, we could say. That's one of the words. The eloquence of the Quran. The clear speech of the Quran. It's good to study it. And it's good for those who are interested in understanding the teachings of Imam W.D. Muhammad. Balaga, I would say Balaga is a prerequisite, even if we start with the beginning part of Balaga. When we begin to form any type of school of thought, a school based upon Imam W.D. Muhammad, anytime we want to look at the Quran and understand Imam W.D. Muhammad, Balaga would have to become a prerequisite. Yes, or else we will hear English words and we apply concepts and ideas to them, but it may not be concepts and ideas that's based upon the Arabic text. A shift may be caused in your reading, and you may take some of the ideas and concepts out of context. Yes. So I invite you to the Balaga class, because even now I'm saying things now we can understand how the Imam was teaching this, especially in the earlier days, but throughout. Not seeing this in the physical sense, but Allah is the first teacher, showing us here. So, Aslamtu wajhiya lillahi wa man ittaba'ani. This verse we can connect with the verse, be patient, be patient. Be patient with yourself. Nafsaka, your whole self. Be patient with those who call upon your Lord in the mornings and evenings, seeking, desiring wajhahu, his essence, desiring his being, so forth and so on. Now, not that they're going to see some eyes and ears and nose and mouth formed in the clouds, formed in the sky, and we say that must be Allah. No. But people who are not educated in Scripture, they may have those ideas, especially coming out of the American environment of religion. Now, Ibn Arabi is another source. I'm going to show Ibn Arabi, but I don't want to show too much of Ibn Arabi. Ibn Arabi is more of the philosopher. We would call the religious philosopher. Now, him and Imam W.D. Muhammad, they have a lot in common in the way they think and how they present themselves and this knowledge of Islam. You'll find they have a lot in common in their methodology. If you want to compare a tafsir with Imam W.D. Muhammad, educate yourself to read Ibn Arabi. That would be a truer comparison than to compare him with Shawkani or Ibn Kathir. They are different animals. But you would put Ibn Arabi and the Imam in the same category. They are of the same species, of the same category, in terms of their thinking on Quran. I hope you understand. So Ibn Arabi says, Yuriduna wajhahu. He's just going to be commenting. You see, here's the bracket from the verse. He's just going to be commenting on this part of the verse, which I am interested in, the comments they're going to be making on wajhahu. He says, that is to say, Dhatahu. Fa-hasabun. Dhatahu fa-hasabun. So that is that he is saying the same, Dhatahu, that. The same as the others have said, which we go back and we're looking at Ragab. Ragab, he's showing, and the Quran is showing that which is desired by it, that. So now these are scholars saying something similar. These two. Ragab is a well-known scholar. His book is read by many scholars. And Ibn Arabi is a well-known scholar. But being a philosopher as he is, some people, they don't like Ibn Arabi because of the way he teaches, the way he speaks, because they may not understand him. The same with Imam W. Muhammad. A lot of people don't like him just because they're not his idol. I have my own idol. So whatever he say, we're going to not accept because he's not our idol. And there some don't like because of the way he teaches. So he's saying the same word, that too. Yes, that too, or we could say fahasabun, or showing this idea of nobility, highness. As we find ikram, we could be taken from al-jalali wal-ikram hasab, this idea. Now, another source, we look at Shawkani. And we have here, Shawkani is talking about yuriduna wajhahu. So we're getting notes that we can get from each source. These are sources I'm introducing you to. In the class, I will show you how to get these sources online, get to these sources online, that if you want to start looking at them, take a look. But if you notice, I'm not going to Shawkani and getting everything he said on the whole verse. I'm only interested in yuriduna wajhahu so far. So he's going to comment on it. He says, Annahum yuriduna bi du'aihim radiyallahu Allahi subhanahu. So he's saying here that they desire with their du'as. This is the dua. You know the word dua. With their prayers, the pleasure of Allah. So instead of saying which, he's going to say who. Which he's saying is radia. Uradi. So he's saying the pleasure of Allah, the satisfaction of Allah. They're seeking the satisfaction of Allah. So you can see how the scholars are not trying to take faith literally. That's what I'm bringing. Then he said, well, the jumlatu, and this jumla is the phrase. I translate jumla as phrase. Instead of saying clause, sentence, phrase, in English, there's a difference. So I take the word jumla, and I'm talking about jumla in terms of, I use the term phrase. Whether it's a complete thought or not, I still call it jumla. Now, someone could say, but that's not jumla. Jumla is a complete thought. I'm letting you know that now. That's what I'm doing. It saves the trouble of determining what's a full thought and not. Because the Quran, when we read the Quran, we're reading signs. We're not reading sentences. Even though there are full thoughts, and many of you can see now by looking at Abu Faris as to why I chose it, it shows you a lot of the ellipses in terms of words being dropped. Now, jumla, jumla is the jumlatu is the phrase. As jumlatu fi mahalli nasbin is saying that the jumla, this jumla, what is the jumla? The phrase is yuriduna wajhahu. That's the phrase. The clause, the phrase, however you want to put it. And this phrase is in the place of, he's saying it's in the place of the accusative. Now, let me pause here and explain. Because this, I haven't gotten into teaching. I tried to do it at first. It became confusing for the students. So I pulled back on it. the phrases have grammatical places or positions like the words do. Right now we study grammar word by word. But also phrases have grammatical positions as they relate to other phrases. So he's saying that yuriduna wajhahu, this phrase, as though we make this just one set. You know, we have sets. That's just one set. This one set, yuriduna wajhahu, is in it's accusative ala el hal, upon condition. In the accusative, mansub, the accusative, we have hal, condition. How something is being done. How it's being done. So that's what he's saying here. That phrase is talking about how the previous phrase is being done. We can go back now and we can relate it to the verse. Since we say the naskun is related to the verb, then we will say if this is the hal, this is the hal, this is the mansub, we go back and then we say yad'una. Yad'una would be they are praying. They are praying, and the condition in which they are praying is yuriduna wajhahu. That's how you would understand the phrase being the how of the verb yad'una. Yes. But I don't get a lot into phrases. Some people, they teach phrases. They may teach the mubtada'un, the subject, and then the verb. You could have a verb and an object as the predicate. They would define it as the predicate phrase of the subject. Sometimes you can have a prepositional phrase, and they will treat it as the not the subject, as the predicate. They will treat it as the predicate. Prepositional phrase could be treated as a predicate. A verbal phrase could be treated as a predicate. And a noun, as we know, can be treated as a predicate. But that's a lot of information for the students. And when I was showing that, it was confusing. But this is Shawkani. This is what Shawkani does. He gets into the language. So it gives you a clearer reading, not only in definition, but also in language and grammar itself. So that's what he's saying here, is that two things we get out of Shawkani is that the pleasure, we could say, when we say they're seeking his face, they're seeking the pleasure of Allah, the approval of Allah. Yes. Now, before we go, because I'm going to show something else from this point forward, then we can go back just to show you. Now, if we go back and we say, Fatsilu wujuhakum wa aydiyakum. Then the wujhakum, we would say, then wash, then clean, wash, what have you. Wujuhakum, your whole being. So when you're washing the face in the wudu, we could say, based upon Quran bil Quran, and these scholars, they're both, because we show dhu here, dhu is associated with face. Then we could say, when you're washing your face as a sign, you're cleansing your whole being. It's a sign of you cleansing your whole being. Wudu is a ritual. In the rituals, they're full of symbols, signs, and symbols. So it symbolizes you cleansing your whole being when you wash your face. Yes. You're cleansing your soul. You're cleansing your heart. You're cleansing your mind. You're cleansing the intellect. You're cleansing your thoughts. Your whole being is being cleansed by just using the face as a symbol representing the whole being. Yes. And where would this thought come from? It's come from me extracting the idea from the Quran itself, using Quran bil Quran. But you could say, no, I don't accept it. You don't have to. But if I'm showing this and we keep learning this, then I'm on the road to doing my job to help you understand what Imam W.D. Muhammad is saying. How the Quran is the first teacher, and understand how he's doing it. Yes, with the Quran, not bringing other sources. Only sources related to the Quran to help see the Quran itself. Then, if you can see the Quran itself and read the Quran, because our class is, Mali so far, is to learn how to read the Quran with comprehension. And we're doing that verse by verse with comprehension. Yes. Not just reciting, but with comprehension. Comprehension. Once we can do that, then we can see how Imam W.D. Muhammad is speaking from the Quran. Yes. As we develop. Yes. I could do it. In fact, I've done it in some presentations, and I could do it even more. But what use would it be if you can't do it? Then I wouldn't be a good teacher. Yes. I'm teaching, not preaching. I'm not setting myself up as an idol to be liked, admired, or even worshipped. No. A teacher producing students that can learn to read the Quran. So we go back and we can see from this verse, connecting with the other verse, those women ittabani. Keep that in mind. And who follow me. Now, we did Ibn Arabi, we did Shawkani, Ibn Kathir, the last one, I think. No, we have two more. Ibn Kathir. So Ibn Kathir, when we go to Ibn Kathir, he puts the whole part. The whole part we're looking at, he has the whole part. وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. The whole piece he puts. Now he's going to comment on, when you start reading, we'll read up to commas. Let's see. This must be the first comma, the first part. Always look back to see what is he speaking about in the verse. You know, you got an idea of the verse. You have an idea of the verse. So he's going to be talking about something in the verse. So he's saying, Ijlis, sit. Ijlis ma'a alladina yadkuruna Allah. So sit with those who are remembering Allah, who are mentioning Allah. He said, Yad'una, we go back up. What is he talking about? He's talking about Yad'una. Those who Yad'una Allah. Yad'una Rabbahum. That's what he's talking about. So he's saying, be patient with them. Be patient with yourself. Have patience with them that's remembering or mentioning Allah. Yes. Now, sit with them. Well, yuhammidunahu, and they not only mentioning him, but they are showing gratitude towards him. Yuhammiduna. Alhamdulillah. Showing gratitude. Well, yusabbihunahu, and they're praising and glorifying him. I'm going to leave it at that translation. Well, yukabbirunahu, and they're magnifying him, expressing their greatness, mentioning in him in his greatness, his highness, his nobility. All of it. وَيَسْأَلُونَهُ, and they are requesting from him, seeking a request from him. They're doing all of this, bukratan, mornings, bukratan, we go back, he's talking about bukratan. Bukratan will be mornings, gadat, we got 3 words now. We got gadati, we got bukratan, and we have sabah. Sabah. So this helps the student in their vocabulary. But we're not trying to go too deep in the words. We're just giving a common definition. The one we're looking at more than the surface is waj. Bukratan, washi, and evening, morning and evening. They're doing this. All of this is part of yad'un. So if we look at Ibn Kathir, he's saying, what's yad'una? Yad'una is yadkuruna, yuhammiduna, yusabbuhuna, and yukabbiruna, and yas'aluna. All of this we could say is yad'una. And then we had a couple of other words, yad'una. And that could be placed in your reflection when we get it, or your comment. Right now, it'll be in your comment. These are ideas you're getting in your comment. He says, Min ibadillahi, and ibadillahi are those alladina, those who are doing it. Sawa'un kanu fuqara'a aw agniya. Is the same whether they are fuqara, poor, or rich. Still, it's better. Ijlis. Sit with them. Have the patience to sit with them. Yuqalu, it is said, Inna had nuzilat. Now he's going to show the idea, or we could say the purpose of the revelation, the reason of the revelation, or what it is associated with, what this revelation is associated with. And I would say the historical reference to the verse. Let me bring it up. The historical reference to the verse. He said, in had nuzilat, that it is, surely it was sent down, fi asrafi al-Quraysh, in concerning the nobles of the Quraysh. Hina talabu, when or while talabu, they were requesting men and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they were requesting from the Prophet and yajlisa, that he sit ma'ahum, with them, wahdahu, only. This is the idea. The nobles, the higher class, the upper class, those who felt they were better than the poor, were requesting that Muhammad the Prophet sit with them. وَلَا يُجَالِسُهُمْ بِدُعَاءِ أَصْحَابِهِ, and that he do not sit with them, he does not sit them with the weaker of his companions. They don't want to sit with the weaker of the companions, Bilali, like Bilal, Amar, and there are others. فَنَهَاهُ Allahu an dhalik. Thus Allah, He prohibited that. The idea of this group, they don't want to sit with the poor. They don't want to sit with the poor or the weaker ones in their existence, we could say. We'll see. So they want him to sit with them. And Allah is revealing to him, to Muhammad the Prophet, no, be patient with them. Be patient with them. Don't overlook them. Don't overlook them. And you'll see more as the verse explains. Don't overlook them seeking better company or better results or the goods of the material goods of this life that you may get from. I'm not saying it literally, but that you're going to get from sitting with the nobles. Yes. Don't turn away from them. And the last one source is similar, is Al-Bahru Al-Muhit. Al-Bahru Al-Muhit is Abu Hayat. This is also a good source. He deals with language and he makes comment on the verse. So you'll see him. I'm showing you this because you will see something similar and different, similar things and different things in the various sources. Qala al-kufaru Quraysha. The disbelievers of the Quraysh, they said, "Law ab'adta," if you expel them, remove them. Ha'ulai an nafsika, these from yourself. If you ask them to leave, la jalasnaka, then we will sit with you. This is what the kuffar, the disbelievers, I say, the disbelievers, the hypocrites, so forth and so on. If you ask them to leave, remove them, then we will sit with you. And we will befriend you and be your companions. This is what they're saying to the Prophet, because they don't want to sit. He says, Ya'nuna, they mean Amar, Suhaib, Sulaiman, Ibn Mas'ud, and Bilal. These are the ones that he's telling the Prophet not to sit with them. وَنَحْوُهُمْ, and those that are like them. وَنَحْوُهُمْ مِنَ الْفُقَرَاءِ, from the poor. Yes, this is the idea of the verse. But we looked at, I want to show you the other sources, the idea of the verse, the historical reference of the verse. Then we would take it as a lesson. We could take the historical verse, the historical reference of the verse as students. Then we don't look at it so literally and go back 1,400 years ago plus, read the comment, the historical reference, and then don't apply it to today and another time, another place. It would take the principle of analogy. We have to use analogy. Take the situation and then see where we see this common idea occurring in our own environment. And we make the analogy of it, and then we can apply the Quran to our life with the similar analogy. Someone not wanting to sit with others. We can start with the young students in middle school. We see this happening from middle school, grade school, all the way up. Yes. You can't sit at my table. You don't sit with them. You have to sit with us. You have to be with this noble group. If you ain't part of the noble group, you're not what's happening. So forth and so on. Yes. And we see this throughout the American public and probably throughout the world. I haven't been all over the world, so I can't speak of the world. But in the American public, this principle applies. Yes. So if you're the one If you're the one, the knowledgeable one, then, and the teacher, you can't just say, I'm only going to teach certain ones. I'm only going to teach those who I find productive and they will pay me well. I'm not going to teach the poor. They don't have no money. They don't have much coming from them, so forth and so on. Wakalu. That's the final part. And they say it. Inariha jibabihim tu'dhina. This is a saying. It's not a literal saying. Literally, it's surely, we could say, surely the scent of their, we could say, their clothes, or the scent of their body that comes through their clothes, this idea. Tu'dhina, it offends us. That's the literal. But they're not speaking in the literal sense. What they're saying, when you say this, you're saying it applies to someone which nothing grows or produce from them. They're poor. They don't develop anything. They don't produce anything. Not much comes from them. What are you going to get from them sitting with them? What are you going to get from them being with them? This is what some people said to the Imam W. Muhammad. Why don't you leave them? They're not producing anything. All these initiatives you've come up with to help advance the group, they're not working with them. It's not going to work. There's no Elijahville. Why are you wasting your time with them? This is because the scent of their clothing is very offensive. We don't want to be with them, and you shouldn't be with them. Come and join us. If you join us, you'll be more productive. Your ideas will be seen better, so forth and so on. With them, there will be no college. There's no Sedalia. There's no Elijahville. There's no collective purchasing. There's no ComTrust. All of these things you're trying to do with them, there's no Arabic students. They're not interested in this Quran. They're not. All the things you were trying to encourage with them, nothing's going to happen with them. This is how they're talking to Bilal and others. The more nobles of the world looking down upon the African American and the leader of the African American. Oh, he's just the leader of those poor people. He ain't nothing. And that's what they say of him. Oh, nothing. He ain't no scholar. He ain't nobody. He's just the leader of those people who produce nothing. I look down on him. Yes. Some people do. But that's what they said to him. Why don't you leave them? Leave them and come with us. That's the idea of Inariha. Why are you sitting with them? If you leave them and come with us, we'll be your companions. And perhaps you'll do greater in the world with us than you will with them. You see, I took this. Now this might hurt some people. It may hurt some people when I read this and I look to see, where do I see this at? Where can I make this analogy of this verse based upon what is being said here? Where can I make this analogy at? And when I look right in my own environment, my own people, my own group, right here, it offends people. People don't like it. They get upset by it. You're talking about us. You're saying this. Leave it alone. No. I shouldn't suppress myself. When I'm reading Quran, don't suppress yourself. When ideas come and you see it, don't suppress it. You'll punish yourself. The Quran will begin to punish you. Then you may see it and you may say, maybe I do that. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Yes. If Muhammad the Prophet can be corrected, then we all should be able to be corrected as individuals. Thus, Fanuzilat, he says, wasbir nafsaka. Be patient. Patient yourself. Be patient with yourself. Yes. So we find Muhammad the Prophet, very patient. We find Imam W. Muhammad, very patient. I thank you for your time. Assalamu alaikum.